Welcome back to Conspired, where skeptics and believers come together to discover the truth.
Hey, what's up? All my little Yannies and Laurels out there.
Oh, you and that audio from wherever you found that from.
I don't know, I was kind of late on it. I saw it on Twitter, or I'd been seeing it like in a bunch of memes from different places, and I was like, what is this? And so I Googled it, and apparently it's this audio where some people hear Laurel and some people hear Yanny. Remember a few years ago, I don't know if it was a few years ago, there was that dress that some people thought looked blue and black, and other people thought it looked gold and white. Remember?
Yeah, I remember that one.
Yeah, and so it's basically that, except with audio. And people are hearing two different things, whereas before they were viewing two different things.
Yeah, I didn't believe that people were hearing Yanny on there until you showed me a couple of friends that actually said, I don't know how you hear Laurel on there.
I hear nothing except Laurel. And someone suggested that maybe it's an age thing, but I don't know. But I figured we could play this at the beginning of the podcast and then maybe have a poll on Twitter and see which
one you hear.
Think.
Yeah.
And like I said before, like I can hear Yanny more clearly now than I could before. But Laurel is still the overpowering sound for me. Like all I hear, Laurel.
See, when she asked me to listen to it, I kept hearing like floral and moral and all these other words. And then whenever she said it was Laurel or Yanny, I was like, well, obviously it's Laurel. But when we started testing, we got in here ready for the podcast and everything, she started playing it, and I could hear it through the headphone or through the.
I freaked out because I was like, I can hear Yanny.
Yeah.
Because I had just been wanting to hear Yanny because I couldn't hear it.
The only way we heard it was through the headphones.
Some people said it does depend on how you're listening to it too. Like if you're listening to it on a phone versus like through headphones or something.
Yeah, that would make sense.
I don't know.
Let's get into this. I'm sure people have been waiting a while. We're sorry we've been so
long were we
late.
Away? We were supposed to do this last Friday, and today's Thursday.
Yeah, and today's Thursday.
So
a lot of stuff's come up.
Yeah, scheduling conflicts.
We hate leaving you guys like that. It's not like we're doing it on purpose.
No, if I could...
wait for the third installment.
No, if I could, I'd talk about this every single day, every single night. But
she definitely would.
Conflicts are conflicts, and so, but we will press on. We're fortunate enough that I'm sure you guys are understanding. I know a lot of you were pressing us on Twitter about where we were, and so we just wanted to make sure we said that we apologize for the delay. I can't promise it won't happen again in the future, but I do promise to make you aware the second we know that there's going to be a conflict.
Yeah, because she works mornings and I work evenings, and so we have to have that day where I'm off, and we can, or unless she's off that day and we do it in the morning, but that rarely happens.
But just as a reminder, if you are a new listener, this podcast is called Conspired, and
I'm Gerald.
Yeah. And we are on iTunes, Overcast, Stitcher, Google Play. What else am I leaving out?
Just stick to iTunes.
Or Overcast. That's my personal preference.
Well, that actually, I do like to listen to our episodes just to see how I sound and everything.
Them on Overcast.
Overcast is what I use. Yeah.
And also, you have a chance to follow us on any of our social media platforms. Please do. We are on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search Conspired and you'll find us for regular updates about upcoming content as well as new episodes.
We also have our YouTube listeners. I know a few of them.
Yeah, we are on
YouTube
as well.
Yeah.
There's not very many, but
I still appreciate our YouTube listeners.
Yeah.
Because
Definitely.
you're just staring at a screen with an eyeball on it and just listening to us talk.
I know. Well, that's how it is on Overcast. But I think a lot of people listen to podcasts like on their way to work, and so they're not like staring at anything.
Right.
Whereas YouTube, like you have to keep it open to keep it playing, and so they are kind of staring.
Exactly. So maybe one time we should just put our beautiful faces on there on YouTube.
We feel you, YouTubers. Thank you for the support.
Yeah.
But I mean, we're doing really well. We've had, I think you even said on Twitter, I think you posted, we've had about 2,000 downloads in our first month of this podcast even being up. That is incredible.
Yes, it was like a couple of days over a month, almost 2,000 downloads, which I don't even know if that's good, but to me, I'm happy.
I was about to say, it is good. I was reading up on some podcasts, and most podcasts that start, in these early stages, you might be lucky to have 5 followers at the most with 100 downloads or so. So this is actually, and I mean, it's all because of the listeners. So we appreciate your guys' support so much. And we can't wait to keep bringing you content. And the best way for us to keep you, listening and all that kind of stuff is for you to tell us what kinds of things you like to hear. If you enjoyed the true crime, let us know. If you wish our next episode might be more a little paranormal, I definitely want to get into some of that.
We have had some people recommend the Denver Airport.
The Denver Airport, which, like I was going to say, if you're more into conspiracy theories, maybe political conspiracy theories, I'm all about talking about that as well. Just let us know what you want to hear, because we love doing this podcast, and it's for you guys. So let us know, because I'm down for talking about anything.
Yep.
But I will say, I love true crime. I love it all, but true crime is my passion.
The paranormal, I just like it because I like doing the research on debunking it. Mm-hmm. Or at least trying to.
I like true crime, because it's true, so you can't debunk it.
Well, no, the reason I like true crime is not to debunk it. It's to listen to you tell me about these crimes and me trying to decide on my own whether, if I was in a jury.
Some people said, well, why is your podcast conspiracy and you talk about true crime? Well, it's because there are conspiracies about what actually happened with some of these cases. And so, they fit.
And I was, like I said, I'm usually the person on Twitter.
He's our
PR, yeah. And I have noticed there are a few podcasters out there that we follow, and they follow us back, and they do the conspiracy with the true crime as well.
Yeah. If you're looking for a new podcast to listen to, I felt like I like supporting other podcasts, so I feel like maybe what we could start doing is like recommending other podcasts and hope that maybe they'll recommend us, or others will recommend us.
Yeah.
One of my favorite podcasts I listen to weekly, they upload weekly, is, of course, I'm obsessed with her, Kendall Ray and her husband, Josh, who on
Josh
the podcast is Josh Aldor.
Yeah.
And they talk about wild conspiracies. They just did one on the 5 most powerful families in the world. They talked about the
that would be
Rothschild, and how there's this conspiracy that they're ruling the world. So if you're into that kind of stuff, or science, they'd like talk about science and aliens and stuff like that. If you're into that, go look up their podcast. It's called Mile Higher Podcast, and you can find it on any of the regular podcast listening courses. I listen on Overcast, so.
See, now that's something I would be interested in, because I've always been into, like, the rich are controlling everything.
Oh, then you need to listen, because they're going to do 5 different podcasts on the 5 families that they believe are ruling. And it's actually very fascinating. I didn't think I would be that interested in it, but it was pretty cool.
Yeah, it does. I'd like to give a shout out to our buddy Ryan on Twitter.
Yeah, Ryan.
Ryan's the best.
Ryan's been there for us since the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
We definitely like your support, buddy.
Yes, and I wish he could actually come to the U.S.
He's
so
one of
he
our
could
UK
go to Chicago.
listeners. Yeah.
Go to Chicago for the Star Wars. Yeah.
Thanks.
That'd be great.
Thanks for your support, bud. We see you. All right. Without further ado, this has been like a 10-minute intro, but I feel like it was kind of necessary since we've been away for a little while.
Yeah.
Let's get into this. Let's talk about where we left off. So
where did we leave off?
We left off. We talked about the trial. We left off with closing arguments.
Verdict.
Yeah, we left right up before the verdict. So after both sides presented their their sides of the case, the prosecution and the defense. And like I said, we went over the evidence in our last episode. If you haven't listened to episode 2, go check that out, because we're going to be talking about the verdict and all the way into the aftermath in this episode. All right. So here we are at the verdict. And I think the simplest thing to do would be to just, tell them what the verdict is. But I figured rather than do that, let's listen to it live. Let's let them hear it, and then we'll talk about it afterward, because it's pretty self-explanatory. I will say that, similar to like 9/11, of course they're not comparable at all, a lot of people remember where they were when this verdict was read.
Mm-hmm.
Like, personally,
I remember.
I was in my parents' living room, and I was like, well, I don't want to give my reaction too much, but that's where I was when this verdict was read. I think you said you were in like a hotel.
No. That was 9/11. 9/11 is in a hotel, and when this verdict came out, I was at my friend Brian and Oscar's house.
Oh, yeah, and they were keeping up with the case.
Yes, they were following it closely, and I had just come over to visit.
Yeah, see, I had been watching it. I was babysitting all that summer, I remember, and the kid I was babysitting for would sleep, and I would just watch the trial all morning.
Yeah.
Awesome.
All right. Let's hear it.
Well, let's play it, and then we'll discuss.
In the Circuit Court for the 9th Judicial Circuit in and for Orange County, Florida. State of Florida versus Caylee Anthony. As to case number 2008 CF 15606-0. As to the charge of first-degree murder, verdict as to count 1. We, the jury, find the defendant not guilty, so say we all, dated at Orlando, Orange County, Florida, on this 5th day of July, 2011, signed for person. As to the charge of aggravated child abuse, verdict as to count 2. We, the jury, find the defendant not guilty, so say we all, dated at Orlando, Orange County, Florida, this 5th day of July, 2011, signed for person. As to the charge of aggravated manslaughter of a child, verdict as to count 3. We, the jury, find the defendant not guilty. So say we all, dated at Orlando, Orange County, Florida, this 5th day of July, 2011, signed for person. As to the charge of providing false information to a law enforcement officer, verdict as to count 4. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of providing false information to a law enforcement officer as charged in the indictment. So say we all, dated Orlando, Orange County, Florida, this 5th day of July, 2011, signed for person. As to the charge of providing false information to a law enforcement officer, verdict as to count 5. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of providing false information to a law enforcement officer as charged in the indictment. So say we all, dated Orlando, Orange County, Florida, this 5th day of July, 2011, signed for person. As to the charge of providing false information to a law enforcement officer, verdict as to count 6. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of providing false information to a law enforcement officer as charged in the indictment. So say we all, dated Orlando, Orange County, Florida, this 5th day of July, 2011, signed for person. As to the charge of providing false information to a law enforcement officer, verdict is to count 7. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of providing false information to a law enforcement officer as charged in the indictment. So say we all, dated Orlando, Orange County, Florida, this 5th day of July, 2011, signed for person.
Okay. So, I mean, obviously, yeah, astounding.
Yeah, I was blown away when I first heard it.
Caylee Anthony is found not guilty of murdering her 2-year-old daughter, Caylee. After a trial of a month and a half, the Florida 9th Judicial Circuit Court jury takes less than 11 hours to reach this verdict in the case. The 7-men, 5-women jury declines to convict Anthony of either first-degree murder or manslaughter, but does convict her of 4 counts of providing false information to law enforcement, which are misdemeanors. But because she had served nearly or just about 2 years in prison already, she is released a few days later due to time served prior to her trial and for good behavior. Absolutely insane. She walks out, I think it was July 17th or July 16th, just days later.
That's just insane to me. I mean, My gosh.
I mean,
I just look at it at everything that she said and everything that she's done.
nobody could believe it, obviously. And, of course, everyone wanted to turn to the jury members. What could you possibly have been thinking? And, of course, upon realizing this, I was just as shocked. But then I started thinking about it. And I started thinking about the evidence. And I heard what the jury members had to say. And I have to say that after I listened to them speaking, like, if I put myself in their position, and I wasn't 1,000% sure.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to put somebody.
And it was because, and I truly believe it was because the death penalty was on the table. Had the death penalty not been on the table, do I believe they probably could have found her guilty? Yeah. But I believe they took it way more seriously because the death penalty was on the table. The prosecution, always says, we don't regret going for the death penalty, because everyone asks them that. And they say, no, we don't. But in all honesty,
They should have.
or they feel like, no, the jury wouldn't have changed their verdict even if we hadn't gone. But I feel like they would have.
I think they would have. If I was on the jury, I know I would have.
Well, see, here's the thing. Like, if I was on first of all, they wouldn't have had me on this jury because I'm not for capital. I'm not for capital punishment, so they wouldn't have had me on this jury anyway. But I'm just saying that if for some reason I was put on it, me being against capital punishment, but agreeing to go by the law, I would not find her guilty unless I was 1,000% sure that she did it, because I could not live with that on my conscience of sending someone to death if I wasn't positive she did it.
Yeah.
And I feel like now, was it reasonable doubt? No. Was there some doubt? Yes. Does that make sense?
I mean, yes, there was doubt. So even if there's a little bit of doubt, that's all they have to do is just put a little bit of doubt into that jury's mind, and, where your 1,000% is, that's where it takes it away.
I feel like it was such a stretch. I feel like it was definitely a stretch, but there were too many missing pieces. And, we're going to talk a little bit about, why the jury members ultimately came up with the decision that they did. But, yeah, I can almost see what they're coming from. And I feel like people, like we talked about last podcast, like you have a trial by media sometimes. Mm-hmm. And, granted, this trial was broadcasted on television, so I guess people did feel like they had all the evidence, but, those things that were, I don't know.
There wasn't all evidence. I listened to you tell me this, and I didn't follow the case. I just heard the end of it. And whenever you're telling it to me, it's pretty much as if I'm hearing it for the first time. And to me, it just sounds like something went wrong.
Well, we're going to get into our theories at the very end, as we often do, or always do. But I do want to go ahead and move forward with what happened after this trial. Obviously, there was absolute chaos. People were furious. They felt like there was no regard for Caylee's life whatsoever. They felt like no justice had been served for Caylee.
I would think so.
Casey's parents, I remember when I was watching this in real time, I was really interested to see how they would react. Because it's like, George was obviously thrown under the bus. Like, how could he possibly, it's just like, does he still love his daughter even though she was accusing him of such awful things? And Cindy, it was hard to read Cindy because she committed perjury for her daughter, clearly. But then, so I was very curious to see their reaction. As soon as the verdict was read, they stone-faced, they got up, walked out the door.
I still say Casey's psychopath, and that her dad, I could see why he would be torn. Could you imagine having a daughter like that?
I don't want to. July 17th, Casey is released from jail. Now, obviously, there's like this great heist she has to get away. Like, she's thrown into a car, and she gets in 2 different cars, and like people are following her. There's protesters everywhere. It was like literally like Secret Service getting her out of that jail. And she's been in hiding basically ever since. She's still the most hated woman in America.
Yeah, I posted a few things on Twitter saying that she was seen by, and I'm not a big promoter of like TMZ, but she was in a bar talking up the patrons there,
Yeah,
and
I mean, but it just makes you wonder, like, Casey, like, she's never going to have a normal life. She's never going to be able to go anywhere and be welcomed or whatever. That will, most places anyway. So it's like, you wonder, do you think she would have preferred to be behind jail, or do you think she's glad to have her freedom and just be hated everywhere she goes?
freedom and hated.
Yeah, I mean,
Because you can always. This is a huge world. She could go to any country she wanted to. Well, not any country, but there are other countries where nobody cares what goes on in a case.
Oh yeah,
in the U.S.
I mean, there might be. But September 15th, Judge Belvin Perry ruled that Anthony owed authorities nearly $98,000 for the cost of Caylee's search. I don't know if you know this, but like when you have a search party done for anybody, it's very expensive. And Casey was flat out telling them lies. You know, the fact that obviously she knew she was dead. Whether or not she killed her or not, she knew she was dead. And was still having them do all these searches, spend all this money, So obviously this was definitely warranted. And then he actually ordered Casey to pay an addition of $119,000 to the police after, thinking about all the extra funding throughout this entire case that she had cost the police.
Mm-hmm.
So a couple years later, January 25th, obviously Casey's trying to pay this money, but eventually Casey would go on to file for bankruptcy. Okay. And then I know last podcast you asked about the lawsuit filed by Zenaida Fernandez-Gonzalez. Eventually this lawsuit was thrown out because obviously Casey couldn't afford to pay it, and ultimately I don't know why it was thrown out, but it was on September 17th, 2015.
I'm trying to think why. Well, and was that the only? You said something about she read the name in a book or something like that, or like a roster.
I'm
or something
trying to
like
remember at the apartment complex where she said Zanny was. I remember reading somewhere that there was a name Zenaida Fernandez-Gonzalez in one of the guest books at that apartment complex. Now, that would have she had been talking about this lady for 2 years, so I guess she would have had to go to that apartment 2 years prior to find that name.
Mm-hmm.
And just kind of went with the story. I don't know.
Yeah, but that poor lady, she probably went through a lot. I mean, even knowing how some people react to things and overreact to things, she probably got death threats.
I'm sure, but like after people found out that Casey was the prime suspect, I'm sure that died down for her.
Yeah, but could you imagine? Okay, for instance, somebody says, Natalie took this kid, and you're like, I didn't take him. And they're at your house, and they're in the parking lot or whatever, and they're like, screaming and calling you a killer or a kidnapper or whatever it is. Could you imagine going through that until they finally realized what happened?
I know, but I guess, like, I'm not, like, that everyone found out it was Casey had something to do with it. So, like, at that point, 2015, I can kind of see why the judge would be kind of over it.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, there was probably defamation, but honestly, I don't see it as being that important.
I don't know. Back to Casey.
In 2015, yeah. Okay, so more of the aftermath after the trial. This is in no particular order. These are a bunch of things that just kind of came out after the trial. The first thing, upon Casey's acquittal, America was furious, and she basically had to go into hiding for the rest of her life. A few of the jurors would later come out and defend their verdict, saying that the state did not give a definitive cause of death, and there was enough reasonable doubt to say that she maybe didn't do it. Some jurors said that they did not fully believe George Anthony, since his testimony changed depending on who was asking the questions. Most said they were uncomfortable rendering a guilty verdict with such circumstantial evidence and such a high price to pay, like death.
Yeah, I mean...
So basically what we said, like they weren't comfortable if they didn't know the answer definitively. They weren't comfortable with giving a guilty verdict.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, if the death penalty was not on there, if it was just a prison sentence, it probably would have been easier. I don't want to give away what I think, so see, I keep wanting to say how I feel, and we're just not there yet.
We're not there yet. All right, pressing onward. Sorry. Okay. So she ended up, after her trial, moving in with a man named Patrick McKenna, who did work on her case, and he did work on the O.J. Simpson case as well. He was part of the Dream Team. And since then, Casey has been working on a career as a photographer. She has given only one interview since her trial with Josh Replogle, I believe, of the Associated Press since her acquittal, where she still pledges her innocence and refused to be filmed, but allowed her voice to be recorded. And I want to play a little bit of that interview for you guys, just so you can kind of see where she is at this point.
As to the charge of first-degree murder,
Gotta fast forward a little bit.
So
well, and there was
unprepared.
actually, I take this back. There was a webcam video released of Casey between her. This was like 2012, very shortly, but it was like a video diary, and like somehow it got leaked, and people. So I take that back. They have heard of her, but she didn't say anything of interest about the case then. She was just talking about how, you know, she had this different hairdo. She had the "Can I speak to the manager" hairdo, and yeah, she was just talking about how her life is different, and how she has a dog, and how she has a computer, and blah blah blah. It was just boring stuff. But this is the only time since her trial that she actually talked about her case.
I don't think she needs a dog.
So, no.
Her lawyer quickly dismissed that.
To your understanding, how did she die?
I don't know.
You don't know.
This is
Something
her
about
after.
drowning, possibly.
Everyone else has their theories. I don't know.
See, that's crazy to me. That she won this case by saying she drowned, and in this interview, they're saying, like, she drowned, right? And she's like, everyone has their theories, I don't know. So clearly saying that was fake.
Mm-hmm.
So your parents had her,
My dad did.
and next thing you know, she's
I-
missing, and right? How did it play?
I did what I was told. I don't remember too much of what.
I did what I was told.
Anthony now says she was sleeping when her daughter vanished.
Give me the situation when things went wrong.
Well,
When did things go wrong? All of a sudden, it's like, where's Caylee? Like, is that how it went?
No, what I remember is being in bed,
Mm-hmm.
my mom coming in before she left for work and saying goodbye to us.
Mhm.
And then waking up several hours later. In a
Later in the
panic.
morning,
Later in the morning. Hour, 2 hours later, and not knowing where she was.
Don't you wish you know what happened?
Absolutely.
The 30-year-old Anthony now lives in the South Florida home of the lead investigator who worked on her case. She works for him in assisting attorneys representing criminal defendants.
One of the reasons I'm so good at my job is because I'm taking everything that the state tried to use against me, like my Facebook and pictures and all that stuff that they distorted. I now go through and research people's backgrounds and put everything together in a good way.
In a good
Anthony
way.
says she still doesn't know what happened in the last
Yeah,
hours of
she looked really
Caylee's
good doing
life.
that hot body
She's not
contest while our
fazed
daughter
that
was
others are
missing.
convinced of her guilt.
Gosh. I can't believe anything she says.
What else about me?
Of Caylee's life, she's not fazed that others are convinced of her guilt.
I don't give a shit about what anybody thinks about me. I don't care about that. I never will. I'm okay with myself. I sleep pretty good at night.
Josh Replogle, the Associated Press, West Palm Beach, Florida.
And that's why she's a psychopath. She sleeps well at
I
night,
don't
even
care
though
what
her
happened.
child
I was about to say, I don't
is
care
gone.
if you killed her or not. You don't sleep good at night if your baby is dead
Yes.
after 3 years old.
Exactly. That's how you know that she is not all
I
there.
don't care if she's saying that to prove that she didn't do it. I don't care if you did it or not. You don't sleep good whether she did drown. You don't sleep good if your baby's dead.
Yeah. or kidnapped or anything like that.
And George and Cindy Anthony in the interview they're going to give, we're talking about, he'll say that he and Cindy have not slept a good any night since Caylee has been gone.
Mm-hmm.
The grandparents are saying that.
Right, they were more parents than she was.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I'm showing my hand a little bit. I'm going to keep going. But I wanted to show you that interview because, like, it's just ridiculous. And, like, the thing that killed me is, like, why are you not sticking with your drowning thing? That's how you won your case. And now she's saying, I don't know. Because it's like she doesn't even want to be accused of knowing that she was dead, or she doesn't want to admit that she did lie about any. She just doesn't want any responsibility. She wants to have been asleep and have it happen in her sleep. Like, she doesn't want to claim any responsibility.
Oh, I know.
It's insane. Okay. So Judge Belvin Perry, who presided over the Caylee Anthony trial, came out a few years after the trial, and I think you talked about this before, with the remark that he believed Caylee was guilty, but he doesn't think that she killed her on purpose. He says he thinks that Caylee gave Caylee too much chloroform so that she was doing it so she could go out and party, and then the child didn't wake up. He also could not believe the verdict, and he even said that he read it twice to make sure that's what he read. And I think that that's a theory that a lot of people believe. And I don't want to get into theories right this second, but I think it's very interesting that the judge, who I feel was a very impartial judge, who had, crap to say about both sides, felt this way.
Yeah, and that was one of the reasons why I posted it on Twitter, is because I wanted to see how people on there would react, hearing that.
Guys, if you hear a dog in the background, I'm sorry, that's the dog Sky. She's
a big baby.
She's a big baby. So just so you know, if you hear that.
If she doesn't get enough attention, she will keep barking. And usually, I gave her some rawhides before we started, and I don't think I gave her enough.
Anyway, we just wanted to make sure you're aware of that. Okay. Excuse me. Next thing that happened after the trial is there were rumors spread after the trial that Caylee could not afford to keep Jose Baez as a lawyer. And so, in order to keep him as a lawyer, she began to pay him with sexual favors.
That makes sense.
And this was a rumor or a theory that was brought to light by an investigator that had worked for Casey's defense team, but he had been fired. He claimed that one day he walked into Jose's office and Caylee was naked with him and she ran off. Jose has denied any misconduct took place, vehemently refutes them, and says that this guy is just making up rumors because we fired him, which
could be a possibility.
True,
yeah.
Could be true.
Yeah.
This particular investigator was very strange because after he got booted from the defense team, he went on to work as a private investigator for Cindy and George Anthony. That's a little sketchy in and of itself, but Jose Baez didn't like him at all, hated him. And he came out, he hated him during the trial, and he actually testified during the trial as Cindy and George Anthony's private investigator, but he came out with this after the trial. So it's could it be true? Possibly. Could it be fake and he's just has sour grapes? Could be.
Could be.
But I thought I'd mention it anyway. Okay. Because where was Caylee getting money to pay Jose Baez with?
That's what I'm saying.
So, I don't know. Okay. Both prosecutor Jeff Ashton and attorney Jose Baez wrote books about their differing experiences during this trial. I've read them both. I think I said that at the beginning. Definitely enjoyed Jeff Ashton's writing more. Jose Baez seemed a little whiny in his book. That he was treated unfairly. I do like one of the quotes from Jeff Ashton's book about Jose Baez. I'll never forget it because I see him every time. He always said that he kind of reminded him of a car salesman. And there was this quote.
He does look like a car salesman.
And there was this quote. He said he was greasy and slinky, slimy, made his way across the floor. He was just saying he was kind of like a used car salesman. He's just trying to sell it. He tries to come off very personable and
I just want to make sure that if we have any listeners that are car salesmen, we're not saying all car salesmen are like that.
No. He's just.
We're talking about those ones you see in the movies.
Salesman. Yeah, like Matilda's dad.
Yes.
Matilda's dad.
Exactly.
One of those kind of guys.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I read them both. Not that Jose Baez's book was bad. It was very interesting to see a new perspective. But all in all, definitely enjoyed Jeff Ashton's book a little more. I felt like he wasn't like saying, "Oh, the defense did this and this and this to me." Like Jose Baez kind of said.
So Baez's book was pretty much all about him, mainly about himself and why it went wrong.
It was more about himself, why he became a lawyer, what people, quote, didn't know about Caylee Anthony, what the prosecution did to him under the table, that kind of stuff.
Okay.
Less about why Caylee was innocent of the trial and more about how he won the case, things like that. So,
I got you.
Jeff Ashton's more about
the case.
Caylee and the case, yeah. So I kind of respected that a little more. All right. Casey's family has mixed emotions about her to this day. This is something I've always wondered. But in 2017, George and Cindy Anthony did an interview with Chris Hansen, who I love. Chris Hansen from To Catch a Predator. Oh, why don't you have a seat?
You're always watching him.
I love Chris Hansen. Okay, anyway, I know, and if I had to interview with anybody, it would obviously be Chris Hansen.
I just remembered remember the first episode of this? You said Caylee, and as soon as you said Caylee, I started laughing and said inside joke.
Oh, Kayla.
Or Kayla, yeah.
Kayla. What was that from? Which podcast was that? Oh, it was from Stephen Avery.
Oh, was it the Stephen Avery case?
Yeah, Kayla.
Oh, yeah. Listen to the Stephen Avery case and you'll hear it's an inside joke. To Catch a Predator. If you know who Lauren is, you'll get the joke.
I want to do a podcast on Lauren.
How are we going to do one on Lauren?
We could do it. Trust me. Anyway, they did an interview with Chris Hansen of Crime Watch Daily and informing the public of their theories as to what occurred and what their relationship stands with their daughter as of today. Cindy does not believe Casey killed Caylee on purpose. She theorizes that perhaps Casey had a seizure, blacked out, and something happened to Caylee while she was out. Because Cindy had said in this interview that before her trial, she saw Casey have like a seizure. And I don't know how much merit I give to that, but that's her theory. George has a different theory, and I kind of wanted to play his interview if I can pull it up. And of course, there's ads. Gosh, while I'm waiting on this 10-second ad, can I just say, why do you have so many ads, YouTube? You did not have this many before.
Yeah. There was a big thing on YouTube a while back where people were saying that they were just going to stop putting their YouTube videos up because of all the ads and everything.
Yeah.
At least 3 of the people that I subscribed to were saying, you know what, we're going to stop, and then Patreon or whatever it is came out. I don't know, it was just all weird. I didn't really understand it.
Yeah. Alright, let me see if I can find it. I've got it.
She was staying with her current boyfriend, this guy that I knew.
And again, and tells the operator.
I'm sorry. I really want to find it, but if I can't find it in like 2 seconds, then...
That happened to her.
You think Casey had a seizure, potentially, and didn't even know
To me,
what
That's
happened?
what Cindy's
That's a
talking about, the seizure.
possibility. And she doesn't remember when she has seizures, unless she knows she's bit her tongue or something. I'm not sure if she didn't have a seizure that day and blacked out and found Caylee in the pool.
I think Cindy's in denial.
Cindy's definitely in denial. Are you kidding me?
I don't think she intentionally wanted to.
This is George.
I don't think she intentionally wanted to, but she should be in jail because of Caylee not being here.
Yep.
Bottom line.
Next, George reveals his darkest secret, why he tried to kill him.
Anyway, I'm not going to go and search for his exact theory, but that kind of got into what he believes. But what he believes is that he doesn't think she did it on purpose, but thinks Casey gave Caylee some type of drug and she didn't wake up. However, he does believe, like he said, she should be in jail for his granddaughter not being here
She
today.
should definitely be in jail.
Well, I'm going to get into that. he says in this interview also, he has not had a relationship with Casey since 2008, nor does he want one. And claims that his daughter/granddaughter died on that same day.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I mean, completely obvious. And their son Lee cut Casey out of his life completely. You find that out in the interview too. And he's now happily married to his fiancee back then, Mallory, and he has a son of his own. And Chris Hansen asks them about, having a grandson, and their eyes just light up. And you can tell that, like, having a grandson has been really good for them.
Yeah, I bet.
But it doesn't replace Caylee, of course.
And I wouldn't want to have my son near her.
Absolutely not. And Lee does it. It's just crazy that, like, can you imagine, like, having a sister or a daughter that you just completely cut out of your life? George also described how Casey's defense attorney, Jose Baez, told George that, quote, he needed to take the fall for his daughter. This was before the trial, when they told him what the theory was going to be. And he says that he needed to agree that he'd been involved in Caylee's disappearance to protect his daughter. A claim that George has since and still vehemently denies. And Jose declined to comment on him saying that. I could totally see it happening.
Yeah.
Him pulling him behind the curtain and be like, look, George, you need to
take the
fall for your daughter.
But no.
No.
Not if you didn't do something.
No, and especially not admitting to something that vile and gruesome. Like, why should he have to? Because his daughter's a liar. No.
And it's your own granddaughter.
Yeah. A 3-year-old. A defenseless 3-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
No.
Yeah.
Her parents, Chris Hansen asks the question, do you think Casey is a sociopath? And they both say, we don't know.
Psychopath.
Well,
sociopath.
Chris Hansen might have used the wrong word.
Yeah, pretty sure.
You'll love this one. Her parents also discuss how they are still living at that house on Hope Spring Drive. Can you believe that? They're still living there. Where all of this went down. But they said that they felt like it would be harder to leave it than anything else.
My thing is that they're still together. That's strong right there.
That is very strong. They did talk about how they had marital problems, but like this whole experience, crazy as it sounds, did make their bond a little stronger, which I can see that.
Yeah.
Because if you only have each other,
Yeah.
And that's your daughter together. But George says that he's had experiences with what he believes to be Caylee's ghost. He's claimed, I know you'd love this, he's claimed to have seen and felt Caylee at different times in the house, particularly in her old bedroom. He says that one time he walked around the hallway and he saw her clear as day.
Now this I actually believe.
Yeah, whatever. Anyway, they did say that. I actually believe it, so.
No.
Casey's parents claim that after 10 years, it is still a difficult thing to go through and that they will never truly be healed or have a genuine relationship with their daughter ever again. Meanwhile, Casey sleeps pretty good at night.
Yeah, she sleeps good.
It's insane. She sleeps pretty good at night and her grandparents are still absolutely tortured and have not had a good night's sleep since.
That's why I'm saying psychopath.
All right, now for our favorite part, we get into our theories. Well, not ours yet. I'm going to present the ones that
You keep teasing me. I'm just like, yes. And then you're like, take it away from you.
Well, I'm going to present the theories that other people, the public has, and then we get to present our own.
Okay, that sounds good.
So, the most popular theory is that Casey killed Caylee purposely. So
that's the most popular?
Yes, this is not. How could you not think that?
Killed her on purpose.
Yes, everybody thinks she killed her on purpose. That was did you miss the trial? The prosecution?
No, I listened to everything.
This was the prosecution.
My idea. I'm not even telling you what my idea is.
I know, but I'm just saying this was the prosecution's claim.
Yeah.
How could you be surprised that this was a...
Well, it's just because out of the whole trial, just me listening to it, it doesn't sound like she did it. It was like neglect.
I'm going to save yours, okay?
Yeah.
This is the theory that Casey killed Caylee purposely. Casey was tired of hearing how she was an inadequate mother, and she wanted to live the, quote, normal life of a girl her age. So, she dosed her daughter with chloroform to avoid unnecessary suffering and suffocated her daughter with duct tape. She then kept the body in the trunk for a few days, unsure of what to do, before finally disposing of it where she was later found. Casey planned to, quote, live it up for the 55 days she believed she could distract her parents. Many believe it was 55 days because from June 16th, that was the amount of time left between Caylee's birthday and August 9th. And so she believed that she would have 55 days before her parents would demand to see Caylee, obviously on her birthday. And Casey had also made her MySpace password Timer55.
Huh. Oh, Timer55.
Yeah, this was
That's
a little,
right.
This
We
was
did
a
have
little
somebody
known
on
thing.
Twitter.
This was a little known thing about Timer55. That this is a fact. She did make her password that. What it means, nobody knows. I think it does mean 55 days between when she went missing versus when she'd have to fess up to her being gone. But, you know, and then she tried to tell her attorney one time, like, according to some source, that Zanny had made her password Timer55, and, like, she was like, that's till Caylee's birthday, that's how long I have to find her, or whatever, when she had made that pass. So it's very sketchy.
And like I said, we can't believe anything she says.
Yeah. Okay, here's the second most popular theory. Casey accidentally killed Caylee. Casey wanted to go out and party, but didn't want to look like a bad mom to her friends and family. So she dosed her daughter with chloroform from time to time to get her to sleep in the car. On June 16th, she gave her too much. She found that Caylee wouldn't wake up and panicked. This would fit with Casey trying to call her mom several times around 4 o'clock that day. She put the body in the trunk and decided to ignore it for a couple of days until she could figure out what to do, before she ultimately disposed of it. She decided not to tell anyone so she would not look like a bad mom. She also may have duct taped Caylee's mouth before disposing the body, so that when and if she was caught, she could say Caylee was kidnapped and hoped the duct tape over her mouth would be consistent with a kidnapping. So, that, I just read to you my theory, basically. Well, I should say this. This is what I think happened. A lot of people were like, what about the duct tape? That's why people say it was a murder, is because of the duct tape. But my theory is that, if Caylee had died accidentally, and she had this whole plot, like, what am I gonna do? She has her body in the car, and she's like, what do I do? Okay, whenever I'm caught, I'm gonna say she's been kidnapped. I'm gonna duct tape her mouth so it looks like she was killed in a kidnapping. What's a better way to do that than to duct tape her mouth and make it look like that? So that's what she did. And I believe Dr. G's testimony said that the duct tape was either placed on her before decomposition or in the early stages. So if it was placed on her during the early stages, that would fit. And then she dumped her body in the woods, and then timer 55 days till she had to fess up. And then she was hoping that none of this would happen, obviously, and they would just keep looking and eventually find Caylee's body and think that, oh, Zanny killed her. I think that is what her mindset was. That's why her body was in the trunk. She didn't know what to do with it. She thought about burying it. She had to really think out what she was going to do.
Gosh. Saying it and...
Sorry, you scared me. I thought there was a spider
No,
down here.
no. Every time you said it just kind of
I'm sorry.
irked me because it's a little girl.
Yeah, I know. But yeah, that's what I think. And the thing that has always stuck with me that nobody ever brings up is the crazy call she made to her mom from 4:08 to like 4:15.
That's why I think it was an accident.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Who would you call if you had this accident? Your mom, who's a nurse.
Yeah.
I would be she called her nonstop off the hook. That's when it happened. That's when she found her, I really feel. And she was calling her.
And this was at what time?
Or like 4:08 to 4:15, something like that. She called her nonstop. And I'm sure she was going to, Mom, what do I do? Like, you know, Caylee. And then when she didn't pick up, she's like, all right, I got to figure this out myself. And why she didn't call 911? She didn't want to look like a bad mom.
I see, it's hard to
Her
think.
behavior doesn't match that, granted. But she is not a normal person. I will agree.
No, that's what I'm saying.
I'm going to agree with the defense on that. I don't think we can look at her behavior as evidence for anything. Because she's not a normal person. She's lied her entire life.
Mm-hmm.
She lied about her high school graduation.
Yes.
I think it's easy to... I think her behavior is consistent with who she is.
Yes,
And
exactly.
that doesn't make it right? No. But does it mean that she killed her? Not necessarily. To me, it proves that she might have killed her accidentally and then just went about living her life trying to ignore her problems, and 55 days she's going to say that she was kidnapped and killed.
Right, because there are quite a few psychopaths out in the world that live in the world. Like, people say that CEOs of top 500 countries and or 500 companies, and sometimes presidents can be psychopaths. But it doesn't mean that they're killers. It just means that they lack that empathy and they're very manipulating. You know what I mean? And the reason I say she's not a sociopath is because she's not socially awkward. She's out partying and having fun during this whole time. So I think something bad happened. Either she did drown in the pool, or, the chloroform too much killed her.
And as far as the chloroform goes, I don't know if she was dosing her up with chloroform. I really don't. I'm not really convinced of that.
We're jumping to that because...
No, I'm just saying that I don't know that I'm convinced of that. I don't know that Casey wasn't on the... Remember, I was looking at the
that's what
records.
I'm saying.
She was on the computer for nonstop from 3 to 4 o'clock. And then what if she was on there and Caylee got into something?
Right.
And she got choked by like a phone cord or something, or,
Well,
something happened to her anyway. She went and found her and she's like, oh my gosh. You know what I mean? Like, who's to say she was dosing her with chloroform? I'm not saying I believe that. I'm saying that something happened to Caylee. But the problem is, Casey didn't do anything about it.
right.
So because... I don't care if she killed her accidentally. I don't care what happened to
It's still neglect.
I don't care what happened to that baby. She should be in jail for, like George Anthony said, for Caylee not being there. Because it was her responsibility to take care of that baby.
That's what I'm saying. It's neglect. Like, whenever you were calling Zanny the nanny, the first thing that popped in my head was Xanax. I thought she was given Xanax. But then you started saying that they were Googling chloroform. And I was like, okay, well, yeah, that could be a possibility too, but is she really that good at science to make chloroform? Xanaxes are a lot easier to get a hold of than chloroform.
Yeah, so I'm not totally convinced of that, especially I feel like the prosecution thought that they had fully proved that, but honestly, we talked about Dr. Arpad Voss. I feel like that evidence really was circumstantial.
The smell, that's right. The smell in the trunk.
Listen. The smell in the trunk, I'm convinced of that. There were too many people that said it smelled like a dead body.
No, I'm talking about the chloroform.
Oh, okay.
I'm still on the chloroform.
She had that baby in the trunk.
She did have that baby in the trunk.
Yes. For sure. And I think at one point she had her in the backyard too, because remember the cadaver dogs signaled,
yes.
And she borrowed the neighbor's shovel. I think she was trying to bury her.
She started to, I bet.
And then she was like, this isn't going to work.
Yeah,
then,
she started.
Yeah.
And then she was like, nope, this is not going to work. Farther away.
Yeah. Or not too much farther, like down the street. But I think that was the part where she was like, I got to make this look like a murder, a kidnapping. Mm-hmm. And that's when she put the duct tape on her.
Yeah. No, I agree with that 100%. She took the duct tape off the gas cans.
Well, not necessarily off the gas cans. The whole point was that it was she got it from her dad's shed. The duct tape came from the house, in other words.
The duct tape came from the house.
The shed. Her dad's shed.
But I just made the assumption that since the gas cans were in the trunk at one point, and she did go back real quick and grab the cans out and toss them, that she could have already, if they did have duct tape, because I thought somewhere in there was duct tape on the gas cans.
There was, but the whole idea with that was that they were trying to say
they were just matching up the duct tape.
They were just saying that this is the same duct tape to the one that was
tape.
found in her mouth.
Oh.
And then they were trying to say this is George's duct tape.
Oh, see, I just came to the conclusion.
I know they made too much a big a deal out of the duct tape, but because they're saying, oh, this was George's duct tape. Like Casey couldn't have walked in the shed and gotten it.
Yeah, they all lived in the same house.
Yeah, that was totally stupid.
And she broke into the shed.
She's breaking into all kinds of crap. She's stealing checks. Like, you think Casey's above anything? You think she's above stealing duct tape? Like,
I cannot take my dad's duct tape.
I'll steal checks from my dying grandpa, but I'm not going to steal my dad's duct tape.
Dad told me not to touch the duct tape. I'm not going to touch it.
Ridiculous. Okay, and I'm going to ask you about your theory after we talk about
that was my theory.
Oh, that was? Okay.
Yeah. Like how you're just like, I'll ask you about your theory.
I thought you were just contributing to mine. But anyway,
No, your theory is very sound, and I just wanted to
Yeah.
add what I wanted.
after all these years, you think I wouldn't have a sound theory? Like, are you kidding me?
No, I thought we were going to
I'm-
get to the end, and
I'm
you were going to be
fully-
some lunatic.
I am fully confident in my theory, honestly. But for the sake of the podcast, let me present some alternative theories.
All right, send it
The
our
next
way.
one is Caylee died accidentally. In this theory, Casey had no part in what happened to Caylee. This theory states that Casey was not paying attention to what Caylee was doing around their house, and she either drowned in the pool, got choked on something, tangled in something, etc., and Casey found her dead. She would then go on to panic and cover it up, similar to the theory above. Which, that's basically my theory, but...
Well, you said the other one's your theory. You can't have both.
Well, no, what I'm saying is, like, the chloroform is absent.
Yeah,
All right.
I know what you're saying.
Alright, next one. George Anthony drowned Caylee. This is not a very popular one, but it is one.
Yeah.
This theory says that Casey woke up to find George holding Kaylee's wet body and accused Casey of being a bad mom, then disposed of the body himself. This theory might argue that George held her under the water and drowned her himself while Casey was sleeping.
No, sorry.
George had no... I'm sorry. Can I just... if I haven't said this, let me say this. Go ahead and say this. George had nothing to do with Kaylee's death.
No.
Absolutely nothing. And if you think that, I'm sorry. I need to respect your opinions, but you're a lunatic. Because if you can watch that man
Oh, gosh.
get up
that
on the
was-
stand and
threw me off.
sob and sob and sob just by talking about Casey, how can you look at him? He's that good of an actor?
No, he truly loved her.
I mean,
He
it's,
loved that little girl, and he's still crushed.
he tried to kill himself over her, and the defense is like, oh, he killed himself because he felt bad because he... No! He killed himself because his life was
He
going
tried
to
to
crap,
kill
and
himself, yeah.
yeah, and he lost his daughter. He wasn't getting along with his son. He lost his granddaughter. He wasn't in a good place
He
with
wasn't
Sydney.
in a good place at all.
No.
I mean, I work in that field, and believe me, people come in there and they are pretty distraught. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're,
All right.
they're just in a bad place.
This is the very last theory, and honestly, it's dumb, but in the spirit of good sportsmanship, I'm presenting it.
Oh, God.
This theory says convicted kidnapper Vasco Thompson conspired with George Anthony. In one weird turn that ultimately went nowhere, Caylee Anthony's defense team sought to question Orlando resident Vasco Thompson, a convicted felon sentenced to 10 years in 1988 for kidnapping. Casey's attorneys claimed Thompson was connected to George Anthony through his cell phone records. Thompson responded by telling reporters, "I don't know how they got me involved in all this mess. I had no idea who George Anthony is." Records show 4 calls between George Anthony and Thompson on July 14, 2008, the day before Caylee was reported missing. Thompson told authorities that he had an entirely different phone number at the time, and that he only got the number being cited by the defense in February 2009. The Florida Civil Rights Association protested the calling of Thompson, stating, Jose Baez connected the oldest and most infamous use of racial stereotyping by setting the stage to claim, quote, the black guy did it, in the Caylee Anthony trial. Ultimately, Thompson did not participate in the trial. So obviously the defense is like reaching here for anything.
I was going to say, how many people actually would believe this theory?
No
I mean, it even ranked in there. I mean, that's crazy. There's like probably, 50 people that believe that?
Yeah. I don't know, but that's the end of the theories.
That's great.
I'm just saying, like, out of all of these, mine obviously makes the most sense.
Obviously.
I fit mine to everything. The duct tape, the
It's because
calls.
you've been ruminating over this for 10 years now.
Well, it kills me that a lot of people are like, oh, she killed her because of the duct tape. Like, are you kidding me? Or she killed her because of her behavior? This girl is a whack job. Like,
Psychopath.
her behavior, I'm sorry, it's not that it doesn't mean nothing, but it just shows that she has, what's the name of someone who has no feelings?
She's
pushed all the memories.
Yeah, that's what I'm
not
saying.
saying
That-
she didn't care about Caylee, but she did it. I don't think she knows how to love anyone, not even herself.
No, that's the only person she loves.
No, I don't think she knows how to love herself.
No. To me, I have to disagree. She loves herself completely. That's why she sleeps so well. That is why she goes out and parties as much as she does. she is okay with herself. She has nothing wrong with herself. It's everybody else that doesn't
Well,
matter in her life.
That's the thing, is like, even now, she can't take even part. She can't say, well, you know what, I do feel. She can't take any blame whatsoever.
Yeah.
If this were me and this were years after, you can't get tried for the same crime twice. So I probably would say, like, you know what, I just hate every day Caylee's not here. I'm just devastated, blah, blah, blah. She didn't even say that.
Yeah.
Like, she didn't even say she's sad.
I know.
She's like, I don't take crap from nobody, blah, blah, blah. I sleep too. Like, who are you fighting, Casey? You're the one whose daughter is gone.
Yeah, that's what
and
I'm
you
saying.
don't care. And your poor parents haven't had a good sleep since she went missing, and you sleep pretty good at night. You're either lying to yourself or you're true and you're crazy.
It's clear cut how she is, how her behavior is, and how it affects everyone around her. Even her friends.
Oh, yeah. That's why I remember in the beginning I told you that, like, her friends were talking about how she didn't do drugs. And, like, at this point, I don't think her friends would lie about things that she did. So that's why I believe she didn't do drugs.
I think that she's lied so much that even her friends start to lie too. Lying by being around this person so long.
But, like, that kind of mindset, like, how she... I honestly think she was pretending like Caylee, like, wasn't gone. Like, how she was randomly telling the tattoo artist, oh, yeah, I'm going to bring Caylee with me next time. Like...
Maybe she had a mental break and she actually thought Caylee was kidnapped. And...
Some people can't convince themselves of that.
Oh,
like,
I know.
Honestly.
That's why I'm saying
things
that's
like
possible.
awful things didn't happen that did.
Yeah. It's having a psychotic break.
But honestly, though, I don't think... Because here's the thing. If she wanted to kill her, I feel like... Or if she wanted to be rid of her, she would have just given custody to Cindy. I really feel like she would have.
Exactly.
This is why I don't think she killed her on purpose.
Yeah.
I think that she did... Half the reason I feel like she would have never given Cindy custody is to save face. Like, she didn't want to be accused of being a bad mother. You know what I mean? Same reason she didn't call for help when she saw her poor baby, something bad had happened to her. It was her pride. She, like you said, her pride, her love for herself won out over her baby.
Yes.
Because, like Dr. G said, in 100% of cases where a child has died by accident, 100%, the mom is always called 911. Well, maybe a normal. I was gonna say there's that 1% that maybe a normal mother.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Normal mothers, soon as something goes wrong, call 911.
Of course, because there's a even if that baby looks dead, there's a chance she could be saved.
Yeah, kids drown in pools. People use CPR and bring them back.
And honestly, I could see Caylee just like her being on the computer, because remember the computer record showed her like constant Facebook, MySpace, YouTube, from 3 to 4 that day, and then after 4 o'clock, the calls run in from her to her mom. She found her around 4 o'clock, whatever had happened to her, and she had been like neglecting her or whatever. Yeah. And I'm not saying she neglected her as far as food and clothing and all that. I'm saying that she was on the computer, and she probably did it all the time, like just kind of let Caylee run around while she was on the computer.
Yeah, run around the house.
Just crazy. So she maybe, who knows what happened to her.
We at least put our baby in a cage, you know what I mean?
What?
The baby that's quiet right now, the baby that was barking earlier.
Yeah.
She's getting too emotionally wrapped. She can't take my jokes right now.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about Caylee. It's very sad. Well,
that was... I enjoyed that a lot. I'll tell you that listening to the way you put it together in a storyline for me, trials, it's just not my thing. I can't sit and listen to a trial. I mean, I listened to the last one. I mean, the very end, the verdict. But I didn't listen to everything else. And listening to the way you put it together, it was more like a story to me. So it was more interesting. It was like reading a book, listening to an audiobook or something. So I was really invested in this, and yes, I get emotional one way or the other, but whenever you said it and I said she, and you see what I mean? I get attached. And it's the same way with whether I'm reading a book or watching a movie or something like that. If it sounds, if it's very dramatic and, like tearjerker or drama or something like that, I get really, into it.
I don't know. I've been so invested in this case. I was so glad we had a chance to do a podcast on it, and I want to know what our listeners think. I mean, if you agree with my theory, if you have a theory of your own, I would love to know. Given all the evidence, everything we presented, what do you think happened to poor little Caylee?
Yeah.
Whatever you think, whether you think she did it on purpose, whatever, Casey should be in jail today for Caylee not being here.
Yes, definitely.
It was her responsibility, whatever way you look at it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm all in the feels. I'm all in my feels right now.
All right, guys. Let us know. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Twitter is what I'm on the most. You guys,
Definitely.
Get on Twitter and just let us know what you think, what your ideas are. And maybe you have a different theory. I'd love to hear different theories.
Yeah, I'm all about some theories. Definitely.
All right. So let's wrap this up.
I just want to make sure to tell them, let us know what you want to hear next, guys. This has been a 3-parter, and I've loved doing this for 3 weeks, researching more, but I want to know what we're on to next. I want to know paranormal, conspiracy,
might be doing the Denver
crime.
airport.
We might be doing more true crime. Might be doing some paranormal. We might be doing the conspiracy of Yanny versus Laurel.
No, definitely not.
I'm down with it. I'm into it.
No.
Well, thank you guys so much for sticking with us tonight.
Yes. This is a shorter one than the other ones. So. All right, guys. Thanks for listening to Conspired.
And we will catch you next time. Laters, baby.